The park was quiet, too quiet. A lone swing set swayed gently, a mournful creak in the stillness. Leaves rustled nervously, a skittering dance across the pavement. The late afternoon sun cast long, skeletal shadows that stretched and twisted, reaching out like grasping claws. A chill wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it the scent of rain and an undercurrent of something else, something unsettling. The silence was broken only by the distant hum of traffic, a dull roar that seemed to amplify the eerie solitude. Detective Raylan Matthews ran a hand through his hair, his brow furrowed as he scanned the playground. His eyes, hardened by years of witnessing the city's underbelly, missed nothing. They swept over the empty slide, the deserted sandbox, the picnic table where someone had left behind a half-eaten sandwich and a tipped-over juice box. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his gut, a knot of unease that tightened with every passing second. This wasn't just a park enjoying a quiet afternoon. This was a place holding its breath. A stage set for a tragedy yet to be revealed. He pulled his collar up against the encroaching chill, the gesture doing little to dispel the feeling of dread that had settled over him like a shroud. The call had come in just an hour ago, a frantic mother's worst nightmare. Her son, 8-year-old Daniel Harper, had vanished. 1 minute he was playing hide-and-seek, and the next, he was gone, swallowed whole by the shadows. No witnesses, no signs of a struggle, just an empty swing swaying in the breeze. Raylan knelt down, picking up a small red toy car. He recognized it instantly, Daniel's favorite. He'd seen the boy clutching it earlier that day. Now the toy lay abandoned, a silent testament to the tragedy. A cold wind whipped through the playground, carrying whispers of fear.
Detective Matthews?
A young officer approached cautiously, his eyes darting nervously.
We've finished questioning the other children. No one saw anything.
He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. The words hung heavy in the air, unspoken, but understood. Raylan nodded grimly, his jaw set in a hard line. This wasn't the first time a child had vanished in this city. He knew he was facing a race against time. Every second that ticked by lessened the chances of finding Daniel alive. And as the sun began its slow descent, Raylan made a silent vow. He would find Daniel Harper, no matter the cost. The flickering neon sign outside his apartment building cast a sickly yellow glow across Raylan's face as he unlocked the door. His reflection in the chipped glass pane stared back at him, a stranger with weary eyes. He looked every one of his 40 years, and then some. The past was a dangerous place to linger. He poured himself a drink, the amber liquid sloshing against the sides of the glass. He took a long swallow, the whiskey burning a familiar path down his throat. He closed his eyes, the image of Daniel Harper's face flashing behind his eyelids. The phone rang, jarring him from his thoughts. He picked it up on the third ring, his voice gruff with fatigue.
What's it about, Miller? S3, Matthews. Raylan, it's me. Captain wants to see you. First thing tomorrow morning.
Raylan asked, already knowing the answer. He could hear it in the other man's tone, the unspoken weight of bad news. Raylan hung up the phone, the weight of Miller's words settling heavily in his stomach. He knew what something meant. He'd seen enough crime scenes to last a lifetime. He poured himself another drink, the amber liquid doing little to quench the rising tide of dread. He had a bad feeling about this case, a knot of unease that refused to be untied. He thought about Daniel's parents, their faces etched with worry and a desperate hope that was fading with every passing hour. He knew that look too, the look of parents clinging to the last shreds of hope, praying for a miracle that seemed less likely with every passing moment. He had seen it in the mirror years ago. He knew the agony of waiting, the crushing weight of uncertainty. And he knew the devastating finality of the truth. S3, Media Group, man receiving bad news on phone, distressed, close-up of man's worried face on phone, man in dark room on phone, tense expression at stock at a distribute underscore equally. It's about the Harper boy, Raylan. They found something. It ain't good. The police station was a hive of activity, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and nervous energy. Uniformed officers bustled about, their faces drawn and pale under the harsh fluorescent lights. Detectives huddled in small groups, their voices low and urgent as they exchanged information and theories. Raylan navigated the familiar chaos with practiced ease, his eyes scanning the room, taking in every detail. He found Captain Miller hunched over a stack of files, his face etched with fatigue and concern. Years on the force had taken their toll on the older man. His shoulders stooped under the weight of countless unsolved cases and the city's relentless tide of crime. He looked up as Raylan approached, his eyes holding a mixture of weariness and a flicker of something else. Resignation, or was it defeat?
Morning, Raylan. Take a seat.
Raylan sat down, his gaze drawn to the file on Miller's desk. It was thick, bulging with reports, photographs, and witness statements. He didn't need to ask to know what it contained. The Harper case had already become a tangled web, a labyrinth of dead ends and unanswered questions. He could feel the weight of it settling on his chest, a suffocating pressure that threatened to crush him.
We got a break. Found something at the park, near where the boy disappeared.
Raylan felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that tone, the careful neutrality that masked a storm of emotions. He had heard it often enough in his years on the force, a harbinger of bad news and shattered hopes. He braced himself for what was to come, his mind already racing, trying to piece together the fragments of information he had gathered so far.
What did you find?
Miller hesitated, his gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond Raylan's shoulder.
It's not pretty, Raylan, and it doesn't bode well for the boy.
He pushed the file across the desk, the movement slow and deliberate, as if he were reluctant to unleash the darkness it contained. Raylan reached for it, his fingers brushing against the cold, hard surface. He opened it slowly, his heart pounding in his chest, and stared down at the contents. A single photograph stared back at him. It was Daniel Harper's red toy car, caked in mud and lying abandoned in the undergrowth. But it was the other thing in the photograph that made Raylan's blood run cold. A single, small shoe lay beside the car, its bright red color a stark contrast to the muddy ground. It was a child's shoe, and it was covered in blood. The news spread like wildfire, a chilling wind whipping through the city streets. Daniel Harper was missing. His disappearance a chilling echo of a nightmare that had haunted the city for far too long. Fear settled like a shroud, a palpable presence that clung to the fog rolling in from the bay. Parents clutched their children tighter, their eyes scanning playgrounds and parks with a newfound vigilance. The city that never slept had fallen eerily silent, holding its breath, bracing for the worst. Raylan felt the weight of the city's fear pressing down on him, an almost physical sensation that made it hard to breathe. He knew the feeling all too well. He had felt it before, every time a child vanished, every time the city's darkness claimed another innocent. But this time, it was different. This time, the fear was laced with a raw, primal panic that he hadn't felt in a long time. He walked the streets, his trenchcoat collar pulled up against the damp chill, his eyes scanning the faces of the people he passed. A young mother pushing a stroller, her eyes red-rimmed and filled with a terror he recognized all too well. A group of teenagers huddled on a street corner, their bravado a thin veneer over the fear that flickered in their eyes. A homeless man bundled in layers of ragged clothing, his gaze distant, haunted by demons both real and imagined. Everyone had a story, a fear, a secret they held close. And in the wake of Daniel's disappearance, those secrets seemed to writhe just beneath the surface, threatening to break free. The city was a tinderbox, and Raylan could feel the heat rising. The police station was a whirlwind of activity. Phones rang incessantly, their shrill cries echoing through the hallways. Officers rushed in and out, their faces etched with a grim determination that mirrored Raylan's own. The Harper case had become their top priority, but as the hours ticked by, the initial surge of adrenaline was giving way to a bone-deep weariness. Raylan sat hunched over his desk, his eyes glued to the map spread out before him. Red pushpins marked the locations of other missing children cases from the past few years, a chilling constellation of despair that stretched across the city like a spider web. Each pin represented a life cut short, a family torn apart by an unspeakable loss. And now, Daniel Harper's name was about to be added to that grim roster. He ran a hand through his hair, his fingers tracing the lines of fatigue etched into his face. He had been down this road before too many times. He knew the drill, knew the questions to ask, knew the dead ends that awaited him, but that didn't make it any easier. Each case chipped away at him, leaving him feeling hollowed out and adrift.
Anything?
Miller's voice cut through the haze of Raylan's thoughts. The older man looked even more haggard than usual, his face pale and drawn. The weight of the city's fear was taking its toll on all of them.
We need a break, Raylan. We need something, anything to give us a direction to go in.
Nothing concrete yet. We're chasing down every lead, every rumor, but so far it's all dead ends.
The rain hammered against the windows of the interrogation room, a relentless drumming that matched the rhythm of Raylan's thoughts. He sat across from a young woman, her face hidden in the shadows of a hooded sweatshirt. She was a known associate of a local drug dealer, a small-time player in the city's vast criminal underworld. She wasn't a suspect, not exactly, but she had information that could lead them to Daniel.
Look, we're not interested in your petty drug deals. We're looking for a little boy who's been missing for 2 days. Now, you said you saw something important. Tell me what you saw.
The woman hesitated, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. She was afraid, but not of Raylan. No, her fear ran deeper than that. She was afraid of something else, something that lurked in the shadows of the city.
I saw a car, a black sedan. It was parked near the park that night. The night the kid disappeared.
A black sedan? Can you be more specific?
It was raining hard. I was heading home, cutting through the alley behind the park. I saw the car parked there, its engine running. There was a man inside. He was watching something, or someone.
Raylan leaned forward, his gaze intent.
Did you see his face? Could you identify him?
It was too dark. And the rain, it was coming down so hard, I could barely see. But I saw something else. Something lying on the ground next to the car.
What was it?
A shoe, a small red shoe.
The air crackled with tension as Raylan relayed the information to Miller. The captain listened intently, his face grim, his eyes narrowed in thought. The red shoe, the black sedan, the shadowy figure lurking in the rain-soaked night. It all added up to a picture that made Raylan's blood run cold. They were dealing with something more sinister than a simple missing child case. This was a predator, a hunter stalking the city streets, and they were running out of time to stop him.
Get forensics down to that alley. See if they can pull any prints, any fibers, anything at all from that shoe. And Raylan.
I'm on it.
Raylan interrupted, already halfway out the door. He knew what Miller was going to say. Check the other missing children cases, see if there's a connection, a pattern. His gut told him there was. The black sedan, the red shoe, it all felt too familiar, too deliberate. This wasn't random. This was personal. He spent the next few hours poring over files, his eyes scanning reports and witness statements, searching for any detail, any connection that could break the case open. The city outside was a symphony of sirens and rain, a relentless backdrop to the grim task at hand. The weight of every missing child, every shattered family, pressed down on him, fueling his determination. He found himself drawn back to the map, his fingers tracing the lines of the city streets, connecting the dots of tragedy. There was a pattern. He could feel it. The disappearances weren't random. They were clustered, radiating outward from a central point. And at the heart of that web of despair lay a grim truth waiting to be uncovered. The alleyway was a narrow, garbage-strewn chasm where shadows lingered and secrets whispered. Rainwater dripped from overflowing gutters, creating a mournful symphony. Raylan walked slowly, his senses on high alert. The air was thick with the stench of decay. He found it near the back of the alley, a small red shoe caked in mud. He knelt down, his gaze fixed on the shoe. It was identical to the one in the photograph. This wasn't a coincidence. This was a message. The predator was toying with them, daring them to follow. What was the sick game he was playing? A noise from the far end of the alley made him stiffen. He could feel it, a presence lurking in the shadows. He slowly rose to his feet, his hand near his holster. "I know you're there," he called out. "Come out where I can see you." The only response was the steady drumming of the rain. He was being watched, hunted, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. The rain had stopped, an unnatural quiet had settled over the city. A glimmer of hope flickered in the precinct. A witness had come forward, a man claiming to have seen Daniel Harper. Raylan watched from the observation room. The witness, a middle-aged woman, was recounting her story. She claimed she'd seen Daniel at a bus station. Hope. It was a dangerous thing. It could sustain you, but also blind you. Raylan had learned that lesson the hard way. He watched the woman's face, searching for any sign. Miller entered the observation room.
Think she's legit? He asked.
Raylan shrugged, his gaze never leaving the woman's face.
She's scared, that's for sure. But whether she's lying or not.
He let the sentence hang in the air.
We're running out of time, Raylan, Miller said.
He didn't need to finish the sentence. They both knew what was at stake. Every second that ticked by was a second closer to the edge of a nightmare. And sometimes even the best intentions pave the road to hell. The bus station was a hive of activity, a cacophony of rumbling engines, hissing brakes, and the constant murmur of voices. Raylan moved through the crowd, his eyes scanning faces, searching for any sign of Daniel. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust fumes and stale coffee, a potent cocktail that did little to ease the growing knot of anxiety in his gut. He had seen the security footage, grainy images that showed a young boy matching Daniel's description wandering through the station alone and seemingly lost. The boy in the footage clutched a red toy car, a detail that sent a chill down Raylan's spine. It could be Daniel. It had to be. But even as he clung to that sliver of hope, a nagging doubt gnawed at the edges of his mind. The witness, the bus station, it felt staged, too convenient, like a distraction, a carefully orchestrated move in a game whose rules he didn't understand. He stopped at a coffee stand, the bitter aroma doing little to settle his churning stomach. He ordered a black coffee, his gaze fixed on the flow of people coming and going. He felt exposed, vulnerable, like a pawn being moved across a chessboard by an unseen hand.
Looking for someone, detective?
The voice, low and gravelly, sent a jolt of adrenaline through him. He turned slowly, his hand instinctively reaching for the holster beneath his jacket. The man standing before him was tall, his face obscured by the shadows of a wide-brimmed hat. His eyes, though, were impossible to miss, cold, calculating, and filled with a chilling amusement. Raylan met the man's gaze, his own expression unreadable. He knew the type. Men who moved in the shadows, who traded in secrets and whispered truths the city didn't want to hear. Informants. Necessary evils in Raylan's line of work.
Depends who's asking.
Raylan replied, his voice measured, neutral. He took a sip of his coffee, the bitter liquid doing little to quench the dryness in his throat.
Word on the street is you're looking for a ghost with a red shoe.
Raylan's grip tightened on the coffee cup, his knuckles turning white. He didn't like the man's tone, the knowing glint in his eyes. It was as if he knew something crucial, something Raylan hadn't yet figured out.
You know something?
Raylan asked, his voice deceptively calm. He placed the coffee cup on the counter, never taking his eyes off the man.
I know a lot of things, detective. Things that might interest you. Things that might just lead you to your ghost.
He paused, letting the silence hang in the air, thick and heavy like the humid summer air. He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper, conspiratorial.
But information comes at a price you might not be willing to pay. He wears a mask, detective. A mask of respectability. A mask that hides a monster. What do you mean? Raylan felt a chill crawl up his spine. The ghost you're chasing, the one with the red shoe, he's not who you think he is. He tapped his cigarette, ash cascading onto the table like a miniature gray snowstorm. Then you and I, detective, we understand each other? You're right. I'm haunted. By ghosts this city refuses to forget. Raylan didn't reply. He knew the game. He had played it too many times to count. He let the silence stretch, a silent acknowledgement of the truth in the man's words. You're a hard man to read, detective. Driven. Haunted. The bar was a dingy, smoke-filled hole in the wall, the kind of place that swallowed secrets and whispered tales of forgotten dreams. Raylan sat across from the informant, a cloud of cigarette smoke swirling between them. The air was thick with the smell of stale beer and despair, a familiar scent that clung to Raylan like a second skin. He had paid the informant's price, a hefty sum of cash, siphoned from an off-the-books fund meant for such occasions. It was a necessary evil, a gamble he was willing to take. He had to know what the man knew. He owed that much to Daniel, to all the missing children whose faces haunted his dreams.
The name hit Raylan like a punch to the gut, a name he knew, a name that echoed in the corridors of power and influence, a name that sent shockwaves through him, shattering the last vestiges of doubt. It couldn't be true. It was impossible. But as he stared at the photograph, whispers had slipped across the table. A chilling certainty settled over him. The face in the photo, smiling and benign, belonged to a prominent city councilman, a man known for his philanthropy and his work with underprivileged children, a wolf in sheep's clothing. His mind raced, piecing together the puzzle pieces, the clues he had ignored, the whispers he had dismissed. The black sedan, the red shoe, the carefully orchestrated trail of breadcrumbs. It wasn't random. It was a game, a twisted game designed to taunt and mislead. He had been so close, so focused on the shadows that he had failed to see the darkness lurking in plain sight. He had been played, manipulated by a master puppeteer who hid his true face behind a mask of virtue. Rage, cold and sharp, surged through him, fueled by a sense of betrayal and a desperate need for justice. He looked up, his eyes burning with a newfound resolve. The clock was ticking and he was running out of time. He had to get to Daniel. He had to stop the monster before it was too late. The race to the edge had just begun. The name echoed in Raylan's mind. Councilman Randall Pierce, a pillar of the community, a philanthropist, a champion of children's charities. The irony wasn't lost on Raylan. It was a cruel joke. He slammed his fist on the steering wheel. Pierce's image of benevolence cracked, revealing the monster beneath. His philanthropy wasn't altruism. It was a cover, a smokescreen. Raylan had met Pierce on several occasions. He'd shaken the man's hand, seen nothing but warmth. A chill ran down his spine. He had been played. He pulled out his phone, dialing Miller's number. The line crackled to life.
Miller, he barked, urgency lacing every word.
I know who it is.
Slow down, Raylan, Miller's voice cautioned. Start from the beginning.
It's Pierce, Raylan stated. Councilman Randall Pierce. He's the one we're looking for. Silence. A beat of stunned disbelief stretched between them.
Then, Miller's voice, tight with incredulity. Pierce, are you sure?
I'm sure, Raylan affirmed, his gaze fixed on the photo of a monster hiding in plain sight. The news hit the precinct like a bomb. Disbelief warred with realization as Raylan's revelation settled. Councilman Pierce. Impossible. Unthinkable. Raylan laid out the connections, the whispers, the puzzle pieces. Miller, pale, listened intently, red pushpins marking missing children. The pattern now screamed its terrible truth. Disappearances coincided with Pierce's movements, his charity work.
We need hard evidence, Miller stated, voice tight with anger. Something concrete to take to the DA. We can't just go after Pierce based on whispers.
I know, Raylan agreed, jaw clenched. He understood the need for irrefutable proof, but every second felt like an eternity, time slipping away, like sand through fingers. I'm going to Pierce's estate, Raylan declared. If he's meticulous, there'll be something there, something that ties him to the disappearances. Miller hesitated, gaze boring into Raylan's. He knew the risks, the potential fallout, but he recognized Raylan's unwavering determination.
Be careful, Raylan, Miller warned. Pierce is a powerful man. He'll have eyes and ears everywhere.
I know, Raylan replied, heading for the door. He didn't need reminding of the danger. He felt it in his bones, a storm gathering on the horizon. Pierce's estate stood on a hill overlooking the city, a monument to wealth and privilege. Iron gates, cold and imposing, guarded the entrance. The Pierce family crest emblazoned on the wrought iron, a silent declaration of power and dominion. Raylan parked his car a discreet distance away, shrouding himself in the shadows of the surrounding trees. The night was still, the air heavy with the scent of approaching rain. A lone owl hooted in the distance, its mournful cry echoing Raylan's own sense of foreboding. He approached the gates, his movements fluid, silent. He had a bad feeling about this, a tingling sensation at the back of his neck that spoke of danger lurking close by. He slipped through the gates, his footsteps muffled by the manicured lawns. The house loomed before him, a dark silhouette against the starless sky. Windows, dark and vacant, stared back at him like the eyes of a watchful predator. He tried the handle of a side door, locked. He moved around the perimeter, searching for a way in. He had to find something, anything, that would expose Pierce, bring him down. He wouldn't let this monster get away with it, not this time. A faint light flickered in a window on the second floor. Raylan's heart pounded in his chest. Someone was home. The window yielded to his pressure, the old wood creaking in protest. He slipped inside, finding himself in a darkened study. The air was stale, thick with the scent of dust and old books. Moonlight filtered through the gaps in the heavy curtains, casting long, eerie shadows across the room. He moved cautiously, his senses on high alert. He could hear the faintest of sounds, a muffled sob coming from behind a closed door. He approached the door, his hand hovering near his holster. He threw open the door, his gun drawn. The room, a child's nursery, was bathed in the soft glow of a nightlight. Raylan holstered his weapon, his gaze softening as he approached the child. He recognized the red toy car clutched tightly in the boy's hand. It was Daniel. He was alive. Relief washed over him, a tidal wave of emotion that left him momentarily breathless. But even as he spoke the words, a chilling realization dawned on him. This wasn't over. It was just the beginning. A voice, cold and amused, cut through the silence.
Well done, Detective. You found him.
Raylan whirled around, his eyes scanning the shadows, his hand instinctively reaching for his gun. Councilman Pierce stepped into the pool of moonlight, a chilling smile playing on his lips. He was unarmed, but there was a glint in his eyes, a sense of cold calculation that sent a shiver down Raylan's spine.
You're a fool if you think this changes anything, Pierce, Raylan growled, his voice low, dangerous.
Pierce chuckled, a dry, rasping sound that echoed in the silent room.
On the contrary, Detective, he said, his voice smooth, controlled. This changes everything. You see, you've just made a very powerful enemy.
He stepped closer, his gaze fixed on Daniel, who cowered beneath the blankets, his small body trembling with fear.
You've interfered in matters that don't concern you, Detective, Pierce continued, his voice taking on a menacing edge. And now, you'll face the consequences.
As Pierce spoke, Raylan became aware of a faint humming sound, a low vibration that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. The floor beneath his feet trembled slightly, and then he understood.
You're bluffing, Raylan said, his voice betraying none of the fear that coiled in his gut.
Am I? Pierce smirked, stepping aside to reveal a hidden doorway behind him. A red light pulsed ominously above the entrance. It was a panic room, or worse.
You can't win, Pierce, Raylan said, his voice low, steady. You're finished.
Pierce's smile widened, revealing a glimpse of something dark and feral.
We'll see about that, Detective, he hissed. He glanced down at Daniel, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying light. We'll see who wins in the end.
And with a final, chilling laugh, Pierce disappeared into the panic room, slamming the heavy steel door shut behind him. The humming intensified, the floor vibrating with a growing intensity. Raylan knew what was coming. He had stumbled upon something far more sinister than he could have imagined, and he was running out of time. Panic flared, hot and consuming, threatening to overwhelm Raylan. The floor vibrated beneath his feet, the humming growing louder. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in on him. He lunged for the panic room door, throwing his weight against the cold, unyielding steel. It wouldn't budge. He hammered on the metal with his fists, the sound echoing through the room.
Pierce! He roared, his voice raw with desperation. Open the door!
Only silence met his plea. Silence and the relentless humming that spoke of machinery in motion. He could feel it now, the truth dawning in his gut. This wasn't just a panic room. It was an escape route, a way out, and Pierce had taken Daniel with him. He whirled away from the door, his gaze falling on Daniel. The boy's eyes, wide with fear, met his.
It's going to be okay, Daniel, Raylan said. He had to get the boy out of here. But how? Time was running out.
He scanned the room, searching for another way out. His gaze landed on the window he had used to enter the mansion. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was all he had.
Daniel, he said, his voice firm, commanding, come here, now!
The boy hesitated, then scrambled out from beneath the blankets. Raylan scooped him up, holding him close.
We're going to be okay, he murmured into Daniel's hair.
He raced towards the window, the floor tilting beneath his feet. He threw open the window, the night air rushing in. He could see the lights of the city twinkling in the distance. He glanced back at the panic room door, his blood turning to ice. The red light had vanished, replaced by a gaping black maw. He didn't need to see to know what awaited within. He climbed out the window, holding Daniel tight. He lowered himself down the side of the mansion. He reached the ground, his legs trembling. He set Daniel down, the boy's hand clutching his, and then the world exploded. The roar ripped through the night, a deafening blast. Raylan shielded Daniel with his body, feeling the shockwave. He looked back, his eyes stinging from the dust. The mansion, once a symbol of power and corruption, was gone, reduced to rubble and ash in a heartbeat. And with it, the secrets it held. He held Daniel close, the boy's small body trembling. He didn't know what the future held, but for now, there was a fragile sense of peace. He had saved Daniel, and sometimes that was all that mattered. And that's the end of this incredible journey. Thank you for sticking with us through every twist, turn, and revelation. Your time and support mean the world to us. But the stories don't stop here. If you love thrilling, suspenseful, and captivating tales, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss the next gripping story. Got thoughts on this story? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear what you think. Until next time, stay curious, stay intrigued, and we'll see you in the next one. Subscribe now and get ready for the next unforgettable story.